She came home laughing. 3 in the morning, heels in her hand, hair tangled from the night air, eyes shining like nothing in the world could touch her. "Don't ask," she said, like it was a joke, like I was just some shadow in the corner waiting for her to stumble in. I didn't say a word. I just watched her toss her purse on the chair, humming a song she didn't bother to finish, while I felt something in me go silent, colder than winter steel. People always think revenge is loud, shouting, slamming doors, throwing things against the wall. They're wrong. Sometimes it's the quietest moment that carries the sharpest blade. Before we dive deeper, hit that subscribe button, drop a like, and leave a comment. Tell me, what would you have done in my shoes? Now let's get back to it. It started like any other Friday evening. I'd cooked dinner. Simple, nothing fancy, chicken and roasted potatoes. Amanda said she had girls' night, and I didn't argue. After 20 years of marriage, you stop arguing about the little things. She kissed my cheek, her perfume strong, her dress brighter than she usually wore for friends. "Don't wait up," she smiled, sliding out the door before I could even answer. I sat in the kitchen long after she left, staring at the empty plates. The house was too quiet. Our son, Kevin, was away at college, and suddenly, without his noise, the place felt like a museum filled with memories no one visited anymore. The tick of the clock over the fridge grew louder with each second, and with every tick, something in me twisted tighter. Around 10, I poured myself a drink. Around midnight, another. By 1, I wasn't drunk, but I wasn't sober either. I scrolled through my phone, half expecting some text from her, some picture of the girls clinking glasses, but there was nothing. Only silence. That silence became heavy, pressing on my chest. When the front door finally clicked open, I didn't get up. I didn't speak. I just listened. Her laugh sliced through the night like glass breaking. High, careless, like she was still at that bar or wherever she'd been. She leaned against the wall, still giggling, and when she caught my eyes, she didn't flinch. "Don't ask," she said, shaking her head with a grin, as if her secret belonged to her alone and I was too small to matter. But I mattered, and deep down, she knew it. I didn't yell. I didn't demand answers. Instead, I just let the silence grow, stretching between us like a rope she didn't realize was already tightening. Because the thing about silence is this: it makes people underestimate you. And I was just getting started. The morning after her laughter, the air in the house felt different, heavy like the walls themselves were holding their breath. Amanda shuffled into the kitchen wearing one of my old shirts, her face pale and her eyes puffy from a sleep that clearly hadn't been peaceful. She reached for the coffee pot, but I had already emptied it into the sink. She looked at me, startled, as if she wasn't sure whether to speak. I sat at the table with my laptop open, pretending to scroll through work emails. Her phone buzzed on the counter, and she snatched it up quickly, fingers trembling before she even glanced at the screen. That tiny tremor was enough for me to know what she was hiding. People think betrayal announces itself with screaming matches and long confessions. More often, it shows up in little gestures, a shaky hand, a stolen glance, a forced smile. Amanda was unraveling, and I was going to let her keep pulling her own thread until nothing was left. The night before, while she was out with the girls, I had done more than sit and drink. I'd logged into our bank accounts, our credit cards, our joint savings. I knew every password, every number, every detail. By the time her laughter echoed in the hallway at 3 in the morning, I had already frozen every card. Our financial life was in my hands, and she didn't even realize it yet. When she tried to order groceries or gas in the coming days, she would discover the truth. But that wasn't the only truth waiting for her. We had installed a new home security system last year, one that uploaded every camera feed to the cloud. Amanda had forgotten that detail, but I hadn't. As she kissed her colleague in the shadowed corner of that parking lot, the little red light above the garage door blinked faithfully, capturing it all. I'd watched the footage twice, not because I needed to confirm it, but because I wanted to burn it into my mind. No excuses, no lie she could spin, evidence colder than any words. At 2:30 in the morning, I took a still frame, clear enough to show her lips on his hand sliding around her waist. Then, with one click, I sent it to his wife. No subject line, no explanation, just the truth, raw and undeniable. So that morning, when Amanda stood in the kitchen clutching her phone like it might explode, I didn't ask a thing. She cleared her throat, forcing a casual tone. Did you sleep okay? I nodded once, keeping my eyes on the screen. Her voice wavered. Something's wrong with my card. I tried to order coffee on the way home, and it didn't work. I sipped my drink slowly. Strange, I said, and nothing more. The silence pressed harder. She shifted on her feet, trying again. Maybe the bank system is down? Another shrug from me. I could see her frustration rising, but underneath it was panic. The kind of panic that makes a liar sweat. The hours dragged, and she tried calling the bank. She tried calling me while I sat right there, ignoring her number flashing on my phone screen. Her patience cracked. Why aren't you answering me? She snapped, her voice too sharp for the early morning. I closed the laptop, finally meeting her eyes. They were wide, frantic, the eyes of someone who knew the walls were closing in but didn't yet know how or why. I let the silence stretch until she nearly broke. Then I said calmly, maybe you should call someone else. I'm sure his wife would love to hear your explanation. Her face drained of color. She froze, her hand tightening around the edge of the counter. I could see her calculating, trying to understand what I knew, how much I had seen. She opened her mouth, then closed it again, trapped between denial and confession. I didn't give her the chance to choose. I stood, pushing back my chair, my voice steady. You laughed when you came home last night. Do you remember that? You said, don't ask. So I didn't. I just acted. The clock ticked on the wall, steady and merciless. Amanda sank into a chair, her legs giving way beneath her. She whispered something under her breath, too soft for me to hear. I didn't lean closer. I didn't care. Whatever excuses she was building had no place here. The evidence was already out there, waiting like a bomb in someone else's hands. I left her sitting there in silence. The house was no longer a home. It was a stage, and she had chosen her role. I had chosen mine, too. And mine wasn't to forgive. It was to watch her crumble under the weight of what she had done, one broken piece at a time. By the afternoon, the storm had already begun, though Amanda didn't yet know the full extent of it. I sat in the living room with the curtains half drawn, the dim light making the house feel smaller, like a box closing in on her. My phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. It was his wife, Melissa. She didn't write a paragraph, didn't ask for clarification. She simply sent one word. Thanks. That was enough. I could picture the scene in their house, the confrontation, the shouting, the tears. While Amanda paced the kitchen wringing her hands, another family across town was breaking apart in real time, and I was the one who had cut the cord. Some people might call it cruel, but I saw it as balance. She had made her choice, and choices always demand payment. Amanda tried to busy herself, as if cleaning the counters or folding the same dish towel again and again could erase the weight pressing down on her. I noticed her checking her phone constantly, waiting for a message that never came. Maybe from him. Maybe from her so-called friends who'd been with her the night before. Whoever it was, the silence she received in return was more punishing than any scream I could have delivered. Every minute that passed, her shoulders hunched lower, her face grew tighter. She was unraveling, and I let her. Around 6, she finally broke. What did you do? She demanded, her voice sharp, her eyes red from the tears she had tried to hide. I leaned back on the couch, my arms crossed. I froze everything. I said simply. Every card, every account. You don't get to use what we built together to fund your secrets. She gasped as if the air had been ripped from her chest. You can't just. I cut her off, my voice still calm but colder than before. I already did. She stumbled backward like she'd been struck, her hand gripping the back of the chair for balance. Why would you do that? She asked, but even she knew the question was hollow. Her eyes searched mine, desperate, terrified, but also defiant. Betrayers often cling to the illusion that they can talk their way out of the mess they've created. Amanda was no different. She began spinning excuses. He was just a friend. She'd had too much to drink. I misunderstood what I saw. Every word dug her deeper, and I didn't flinch. When she realized I wasn't biting, her tone shifted. She tried sweetness, begging me to talk, to explain myself, to forgive. But my silence was stronger than her pleas. Finally, frustration twisted her face into something I barely recognized. Do you want to ruin me? She spat. I shook my head slowly. You ruined yourself. The phone rang suddenly, startling her. She glanced at the screen, and I saw the name even from across the room. Melissa. She didn't answer. Her hand shook as she let the call die, her breath coming shallow and quick. I stood, taking the phone from her trembling fingers. "That's the woman whose life you helped shatter last night," I said evenly. "She deserves more honesty than I ever got." Amanda lunged forward, panic written all over her face, but I stepped back. She wasn't fast enough, and she knew it. The shame in her eyes told me she understood. The truth was no longer hers to control. Dinner time came and went without a word. I cooked for myself, leaving her plate empty on the counter. She sat at the table, her head in her hands, too broken to even argue anymore. The house was suffocating in its silence, but it was a silence I welcomed. For years, she had filled the rooms with chatter, with laughter that I once thought was pure. Now, I saw it for what it was, a mask, a curtain pulled over her double life. Later that night, I heard her crying in the bedroom. Deep, ugly sobs that shook the walls. Once, I would have gone to her, held her, told her everything would be fine. But not this time. This time, her cries were the sound of consequence. She cried not for me, not for us, but for herself, for the crumbling image she had built. And I let the sound wash over me like waves on stone, eroding the last remnants of pity I might have had left. I sat awake in the living room long after midnight, the glow of the lamp casting shadows across the floor. My thoughts were steady, my resolve unshaken. She had laughed at me, laughed at us, laughed at the life we built as if it were a joke. But there was nothing funny about what came next. This was only the beginning, and she knew it. The next morning arrived heavy with silence, a silence so deep it felt like the air itself had weight. I woke up on the couch, my neck stiff, the faint sound of movement in the kitchen stirring me awake. Amanda was there, standing at the counter, her face hollow, eyes swollen from hours of tears she hadn't let me see. She turned when she realized I was watching, her lips parting as if to speak, but no words came. She looked like a ghost already, pale and desperate, a woman stripped of the illusions she had clung to for so long. I stood slowly, stretching, and for a moment we just stared at each other. She was searching my face for something, mercy, softness, anything. I gave her nothing. Her phone buzzed again. She grabbed for it instinctively, then froze when she saw the screen. I didn't need to ask. I knew who it was. Melissa had no reason to stop now. Whatever was happening between Amanda and her colleague was out in the open, and every piece of it was being dragged into daylight where no excuse could survive. Amanda pressed the phone to her chest, as though holding it could shield her from what was inside. "Please," she whispered, her voice breaking. "We can fix this. Just tell me what to do." I shook my head. "You don't get to ask me that anymore." The words came out steady, but they carried a weight that left her trembling. For a long time she stood there, clutching her phone like a lifeline, until finally she set it down on the counter with a soft click. She collapsed into the nearest chair, burying her face in her hands. As the morning dragged on, the practical fallout began. She tried to leave the house, but without working cards, she had no way to pay for gas. Her calls to the bank were useless. They confirmed exactly what I'd told her. Everything was frozen, and only I could release it. When she came back inside, her frustration exploded. "You're punishing me like I'm a child," she shouted, her voice cracking under the strain. I didn't even raise my tone. "No, I'm reminding you what it feels like to lose control. You thought you could keep secrets, live two lives, laugh in my face while I sat here waiting. But control isn't yours anymore." The fury drained from her, replaced by something far worse, fear. She looked at me as if I were a stranger, someone she didn't recognize. And in a way, she was right. The man who once forgave, who once turned away from her flaws, who once carried the weight of silence just to keep peace, that man was gone. What stood before her now was not fueled by rage, but by clarity, and clarity is sharper than anger. By the afternoon, Amanda no longer tried to speak. She drifted from room to room like a prisoner pacing her cell, unable to sit still, unable to escape. I sat on the couch, calm, almost eerily so, watching her unravel. When the doorbell rang, she froze in the hallway, her eyes wide. She didn't move. I stood, walked past her, and opened the door. There was no one there, only an envelope on the porch. I picked it up, turned it over in my hands, and saw the handwriting. It was Melissa's. Inside was a single sheet of paper, a printed copy of the photo I had sent, and beneath it, a short note. "Now she knows." I slipped it back into the envelope and set it on the table without a word. Amanda's hands shook as she stared at it, her lips moving soundlessly. As the day turned to night, the weight of reality pressed in on her from every side. She sat on the floor of the living room, her back against the wall, staring at nothing. Once in a while, she would look up at me as if waiting for some verdict, some final blow. But I gave her none. The silence was the verdict. The silence was the punishment. And she knew it. When midnight came again, the house felt colder than it ever had. She rose slowly, walked toward me, and whispered, "You've destroyed everything." I met her gaze without flinching. "No, you did that. I just showed you the pieces." Her breath caught in her throat. She wanted to argue, to fight back, but the truth pressed too heavily on her chest. She turned away, retreating to the bedroom where she closed the door softly, as if even the slam of it might break her further. I remained in the living room, listening to the silence that had replaced the laughter from just 2 nights before. A silence more powerful than rage, more final than any shouted word. And as I sat there, steady and calm, I understood something I had never realized before. Sometimes the quietest revenge cuts the deepest, leaving scars no one else can see. If you've stayed with me until the end, make sure you subscribe, hit the like button, and leave a comment. Tell me what you think. Was silence the right answer, or would you have done something different?